Hi, this is Kay Brooks, and my screencast today is on school choice, the pros and cons, and my interpretation and view of the pros and cons of supporting school choice rather than 100% funding of the public schools. It's October the 14th, 2020, and I'm doing this for my School and Society class in conjunction with Franciscan University of Steubenville in Ohio and Dr. Clinton Bourne. I received my additional information from 2 articles. Here are 10 Reasons School Choice is Winning by Jude Schwalbach and James Selvey, and Top 10 Reasons School Choice is No Choice by Steven Singer. Safety is one of the primary reasons that parents choose a school other than a public school. Quoting from Schwalbach and Selvey, research found that school choice participants were half as likely to commit felonies and misdemeanors as those who went to their local public school. Unquote. Even in small towns, parents feel that enrollment in another school setting allows them to better control who their children have access to. Some have said that parents cannot protect their children from these elements forever, but I fully understand protecting them until they are at least older and somewhat more mature. Some kids are simply more susceptible to bad influences, and until the public schools, especially in the inner city, are safer, parents should have the choice to enroll their children elsewhere. With all the prior attempts and funding at making our public schools safer, it still is not done in certain areas of our country. And drugs in particular are a major concern for parents. And I say this knowing that private charter schools can have their drug users as well. But in a smaller school, it is easier to keep your finger on it, which brings up that parents also feel that they are more involved with the private school than they are in a public school. There's definitely more involvement with fundraising activities with private schools. Years ago, I was also allowed access and sitting in on an active class to see how it was run, and I was permitted that access relatively easily. I'm not sure that that would be the case today in that particular school or in the public school classrooms. I did find out there's plenty going on in private schools that administration does not want parents to know about, and that's the case in public schools as well. It depends on what clubs and activities are planned for the school that the parents can participate in or come to view. Things like in-class plays and exhibits, assemblies, stage programs, grandparents' days, after-school programs, and so on. Parents are often asked to volunteer in private schools, not so much in the public schools. The more things that are offered, the more the parents are in the school, and I think that that's a good thing. There is some segregation, but in our small community, it's segregation of the parents who want to be involved and hands-on versus parents who want to be hands-off. So far as not letting parents in on the things that are going on in a school that perhaps they should be made aware of, it's said that parents vote in a school board that controls a public school, and issues can be brought to them, making public schools accountable to the parents and taxpayers for their funding. The private school that I was involved with did not want parents coming to school board meetings, which were not in session very often anyway, and decisions were made by 2 or 3 people, very top-down, and little parental input. It is true that parents can pull their children out of the private or charter school for the lack of communication and transparency, but it's hard to make that decision if the choices are limited in a particular area, and the public school's reputation is not that good. However, I'm not entirely sure that taxpayers know what decisions a school board is accountable for locally. In fact, I'm not sure that the school board here knows what they are accountable for. For example, I had no idea it was up to them to get good internet into our area for the students, and they hired someone for curriculum. So do they even know how the kids need to be taught? Do they have any idea about the new technology that's out there or the new ways of teaching that are being recommended in colleges at present? It makes for a pretty rough decision all the way around because the accountability is up for grabs everywhere you look. In certain areas, and especially in our area, there are questions on how the funding is spent by them. Those against school choice state that vouchers do not pay for everything, and that the family has to raise additional money in most cases, which may be true of many schools, while at the same time the rich kids are getting the vouchers as well. In our small community, the families that were given monetary help for tuition really benefited from it, and there was additional help if the family could not afford school supplies or uniforms. Parental jobs and travel really don't affect families for school choice in smaller communities. Tuition tuition help is beneficial, and I believe that in our community, some kids could very much benefit from smaller class size and a different environment. Educational savings accounts sound good, but it is like health cost savings accounts. What money is going where it really needs to go? The families who choose private schools in our small community often choose the school for religious reasons. There is another block of students where the parents choose the school for the smaller class size and safety reasons. Morals and other virtues are more easily taught in a school that allows religion, as the virtues are what religion is all about, and many families choose the private schools for that reason. Those teaching in public schools have to worry about stepping on toes, discrimination, and teaching something that some family out there is against. I personally like the idea that the kids prayed in the private school and that we could talk about an end to abortion. The education in private, virtual, and charter schools can be better, but it depends on the administration and the teachers. Otherwise, the education is basically the same. Our private schools have pretty high turnover because they do not pay very much, among other things. In our town's particular case, both the private and the public schools were behind the rest of the country so far as technology use. The private schools were probably guiltier of not individualizing student learning than the public schools, because no teacher had to follow the IEPs in the private school. And the public schools were not all that great at individualizing either. The one-size-fits-all teaching method is unfortunately pretty rampant in small communities. Again, it is who the teachers are and what they are permitted to do, and that can ebb and flow. Smaller class size in private schools is definitely a benefit, and there is less of a chance your child will fall through the cracks of learning. After all, if you can't read in a class of 9, everyone is going to know it. Virtual learning does work very well for some very organized and self-directed children. And I feel that many students could benefit from it if there is good parental involvement, which is why I love blended learning. Some students with physical disabilities may do better virtually, and children with behavioral issues could sit out a year or two while they mature and learn virtually if they are capable of doing it. Public schools have to hire certified teachers. Private schools often just require a bachelor's degree. I have been on both sides of the fence, and teaching from a curriculum book is pretty easy if that's all you're doing, and or getting direction from administration or another teacher. But it is the well-behaved smart kids who have no problem with paper, pencil, book learning, and they also are going to learn in whatever type of school that you put them in. The disadvantaged children are the ones that benefit from different types of schools and different types of teaching, and that's taught in the college courses. The specific learning you get for your grade level gives the teacher ideas for teaching outside the box, but not everyone teaching in the public schools uses their ideas, particularly because of the lack of time due to the amount of testing, and that's not as constant in a private, virtual, or charter school. I guess you have to decide if you want your kids to have the same education that you had years ago, or do you want something different for them? Do your kids need something different? Private schools often do not honor IEPs. They don't have to, and that's the best thing for the student. And is that the best thing for the student, or is it good for the teacher? You have to look at the administration and the teachers and ask the questions. But do parents know what questions to ask? My teacher mentor, Lori Richter, likes the private schools, but feels that students should be tested the same way that the public school students are. For example, the third graders have to pass the reading test to go on to fourth grade, and the students in the private school don't have to take that test. She also feels that the teachers need to be certified for their grade level, or they've missed a huge chunk of information that could be used in the classroom. And I agree with her. If you're unwilling to spend those extra hours learning what you could have learned in the college classroom, then should you be teaching that course? I spent many hours at the computer schooling myself on music because I did not have an actual degree in music, yet I was teaching it. Not only music, but also religion. I guess you have to decide if the school has stepped up their game plan. If they're still teaching the same way they did 20 years ago, they're not told to do it differently. Why should we continue funding for the same results? If the results are the same in all these various schools, why not choose a school for class size and safety reasons? Our public schools saw a huge learning increase with the use of dyslexia. They did it first, and then the private schools started using it. Which schools are trying to coach their supposedly bad teachers or paying for them to take the continuing education they may need to have? Which schools are taking advantage of all that's out there from virtual learning or trying to teach 21st century skills? And yes, private and charter schools can kick out behavior problems and or refuse to let certain kids attend, which is not very Christian, by the way. However, the option to try is still there and should be permitted. Our learning sessions made it pretty clear that all of these different schools do not necessarily provide a better education for normal suburban kids. However, they can be a lifesaver for the disadvantaged problem kids. Again, normal kids can be educated anywhere. I certainly don't feel that it speaks well of any private religious school if they are not going to try to teach special needs children who need their help. There's plenty of these children in the public schools. Public schools should also be doing what they can for them as well. And perhaps select charter schools do a better job at reaching these problem kids. Perhaps they don't. It seems that the disadvantaged kids get the shaft all the way down the line, and they usually don't do well in virtual schools. However, at the end of it all, I believe that competition is good. And with success in the public school system, many who choose private schools today may choose public schools in the future. And that would leave the kids in the private Catholic and Church of Christ schools here who are going for religious reasons. The public schools cannot gripe about losing students and funding without fixing the problems. It's been said that the school choice takes away the attention from the problems in the education system, the poverty and the problems of equity, and that private schools are all run by billionaires, which I don't believe, because Catholic schools are not run by billionaires necessarily. How long have the public schools been trying to clean up their act? It's easy to see why parents have chosen not to wait around for that to happen. No parent is going to say, I'm going to keep sending my kid to this public school with all its problems because they're going to change, and truly mean it. Because how many times have they succeeded in change? I have more hope with the COVID crisis than I have ever had that some real changes coming with the use of virtual learning, but that hasn't been proven yet. And if the public schools will get going, they have the perfect chance to pass up some of the private schools in this regard. There's been plenty of outreach and wraparound programs that have helped lots of kids, but I feel that some of these trauma kids are still being asked to do more than they may be capable of doing, and the teachers still appear to be expecting these kids to just get over it and on with it, with no clear understanding of what they're getting over. Change has to be in this area, with more individualized attention for the kids, and the teachers definitely need more education on trauma kids. In fact, I could give them one if they want to try it out for about 6 months. After all, more than half of the students in our country are at the poverty level with their problems. And so we need to find out how we are failing them and not the lesser percentage of the student group. I will close with my 2 quotations. The first from the Singer article against school choice, and I quote, "If we really want to ensure every child in this country gets an excellent education, the answer isn't school choice. Instead, we need to commit to supporting our public school system. We all need to be in this together. Yes, our schools should look at the needs of each child and tailor education to fit appropriately, but that shouldn't be done in parallel school systems. It should be done under the same umbrella. That way you can't defund and defraud one without hurting all. It can't just be about your child. It has to be about all children," unquote. Well, that's all well and good if you can carry that out, but some parents have been waiting for improvement for a very long time, and the educational system is still not about all the children. The parents cannot wait forever, and yes, it will be about their individual child, because that's what it is to be a parent. The second quote is from Nathan Hoffman and Schwalbach and Selby's pro-school choice article, and I quote, "The best public school won't work for every student. The best private school won't work for every student. The best public charter school won't work for every student. The best virtual school won't work for every student. It's about having options," unquote, and that is where I stand. If and until the perfect educational system is created to service every child in the way they need educated, and that is countrywide, not just in select communities, those options should always remain open and available. Thank you for listening.